My beloved child, do not rush past this moment. Before your fingers carry you somewhere else, allow your heart to become still. There is something that has been waiting for the exact second you would pause. Out of all the voices calling for your attention today, this one has found you for a reason that reaches beyond coincidence. What you are about to hear may seem impossible at first, but stay with every word. If you leave too soon, you will miss the one truth that explains everything your spirit has been sensing in silence. There is a hidden chapter unfolding right now, and it concerns someone whose destiny has been quietly intertwined with yours long before either of you understood it. There was a day that looked ordinary to everyone watching. The sun rose, people smiled, conversations filled the air, promises were spoken, doors opened, plans were made. Nothing about that day appeared unusual, yet heaven watched every second with unusual attention, because one decision made in secret would shape the future of two lives that had not yet fully met. Your soulmate stood before an opportunity that many people would have called a dream. It was everything the world celebrates: security, influence, luxury, comfort, recognition, a future carefully decorated with everything money could purchase. The proposal came wrapped in confidence, polished with charm, and supported by voices insisting that saying yes would be the smartest decision anyone could make. Those around them admired the offer, some envied it, others quietly wished such an opportunity would appear in their own lives. The numbers were impressive, the promises sounded convincing, the future seemed guaranteed. No one questioned it. Why would they? The world has been trained to believe that the richest offer is automatically the greatest blessing, but heaven has never measured wealth the way people do. There is a richness that fills a house, and there is a richness that fills a soul. The first can disappear overnight, the second survives every storm. Your soulmate stood at the center of both possibilities. Though almost no one realized what was truly happening inside their heart, outwardly, they remained calm, they listened politely, they smiled when expected, they thanked those who praised the opportunity before them. Yet beneath that composed expression, another conversation was unfolding, one that no human ear could hear. Their heart kept asking a question that refused to disappear. Why does everything look perfect? Yet something inside me feels strangely unsettled. That question became impossible to ignore, because the soul notices what the eyes cannot. You have experienced this feeling before. There were moments when everyone encouraged you to walk through a certain door. Everything appeared reasonable, every argument sounded logical, every sign pointed toward certainty, yet something deep inside you whispered, "Not this." You doubted yourself. You wondered whether fear was speaking. You questioned your instincts. You almost ignored that quiet voice. But later you realized that unseen wisdom had protected you from what appearances concealed. Your soulmate was standing in one of those moments. They were surrounded by admiration. People congratulated them before any decision had even been made. Family members spoke excitedly about stability. Friends admired the lifestyle waiting ahead. Every conversation assumed the answer would be yes. After all, who turns away from abundance, who refuses a future already wrapped in comfort, who walks away from certainty? The questions echoed around them, Yet another voice echoed even louder within, not loud enough for anyone else to hear, only loud enough to disturb every peaceful thought. That quiet voice whispered, "Something essential is missing." At first, they ignored it. They reminded themselves that feelings can be unreliable. They tried to focus on practical reasons: compatibility, success, status, reputation, shared ambitions. Everything seemed to fit together like carefully arranged pieces, except one piece. There was no peace. The strange thing about true peace is that it rarely competes for attention. It simply waits. When everything else becomes noisy, peace quietly reveals its absence. Your soulmate began noticing small things, nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, only tiny moments that most people would overlook: a conversation that felt rehearsed, a smile that carried hidden emptiness, future plans that sounded exciting but somehow left their heart feeling heavier instead of lighter. Every time they imagined saying yes, something inside them became quieter, not peaceful. Quieter, lonelier, quieter, as though part of their spirit stepped backward while everyone else celebrated. They could not explain it. How do you describe a feeling that refuses to fit into words? How do you defend an intuition against facts? How do you tell people that your soul feels uncomfortable when your circumstances appear perfect? They couldn't, so they remained silent. Silence became their companion, and heaven often speaks most clearly through silence. Meanwhile, you knew nothing about this. You were living your own story, perhaps wondering why certain prayers seemed delayed. Perhaps questioning why meaningful relationships never stayed, perhaps asking why every season of waiting seemed longer than expected. You counted delays. Heaven counted preparation. You measured time. Heaven measured transformation. The difference changes everything. There were nights when you believed your future had become stuck. You watched others celebrate engagements, marriages, anniversaries, and joyful beginnings while your own journey appeared strangely still. You smiled for them, you wished them well, but afterward, in the privacy of your own heart, questions appeared. When will my time come? Have I missed something? Was I forgotten? Those questions rose honestly. And every honest question reached higher than you imagined. Because while you wondered whether heaven remembered your future, heaven was watching someone else's decision protect it. The proposal placed before your soulmate did not merely offer wealth, it offered distraction, not intentionally, not maliciously, but distraction can arrive dressed as opportunity. The most dangerous roads are not always the darkest ones. Sometimes they are the brightest, because brightness without truth still leads people away from where they belong. Your soulmate began praying differently, not with perfect words, not with polished speeches, only with honesty. They whispered, "If this is truly meant for me, let my heart become peaceful." Days passed. The peace never arrived. Instead, questions multiplied. They found themselves thinking about a person they had not yet fully recognized, not your name, not your face, only a feeling, a strange certainty that somewhere, someone existed whose presence would feel entirely different. That feeling refused to disappear. It interrupted ordinary moments, while driving, while working, while laughing with friends, even during conversations about the proposal. An invisible comparison kept appearing, not between two people, between two futures. One future looked impressive, the other could not yet be seen. One offered certainty according to the world, the other required trust. One promised visible riches, the other promised invisible peace. The heart trembled between them. You have been taught that courage always looks dramatic, but some of the greatest courage in existence happens quietly, without applause, without witnesses, without anyone understanding the cost. Your soulmate carried that kind of courage. Not because they felt fearless, because they chose honesty over comfort. Every night they asked themselves another difficult question: what if everyone else is right, and I'm the one making a mistake? That question haunted them. They replayed conversations repeatedly. They imagined both possibilities. They searched for certainty. Instead, they kept discovering something unexpected. Whenever they imagined building a life without genuine soul connection, their heart grew tired. Whenever they imagined waiting for something they could not yet explain, hope quietly returned, hope without evidence, hope without guarantees, hope that made no logical sense. The world would call such hope foolish. But heaven recognizes it differently. Sometimes hope is memory, not memory of the past, memory of purpose. The soul remembers what the mind has not yet encountered. That is why certain people feel familiar before introductions.
That is why some moments seem strangely destined. That is why your spirit occasionally reacts before your thoughts understand why. The deeper your soulmate listened to that mysterious piece, the harder it became to ignore. Others noticed the hesitation. Questions began. What are you waiting for? This opportunity may never come again. People spend their entire lives hoping for this. Don't overthink it. Good advice. According to ordinary wisdom. But ordinary wisdom cannot always recognize extraordinary timing. Pressure increased, expectations grew heavier, family opinions became louder, friends offered persuasive arguments, every conversation gently pushed toward the same answer. Yes, 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 yet inside, another answer quietly formed. No, not because the offer lacked value. Because value and destiny are not always the same. Many people choose what looks valuable, few choose what truly belongs to them. That difference determines entire lifetimes. There came an evening unlike the others. The room was quiet, no conversations, no opinions, no expectations, only stillness. Your soulmate looked out through a window into the fading light and asked one final question: if I walk away, will I regret it forever? Silence answered first, then came something unexpected, not a voice heard with human ears, not a vision, only a deep knowing. A peace unlike anything they had felt during the entire proposal. It lasted only a few moments, yet those moments became enough, because genuine peace never needs to shout, it simply removes confusion. For the first time in weeks, they smiled, not because every answer had arrived, because they finally understood one thing: the richest offer is not always the truest one. They realized something that shocked even them. Money can build beautiful walls, but it cannot promise that laughter will live inside them. Luxury can purchase elegant furniture, but it cannot teach two hearts how to trust. Influence can attract admiration, but admiration is not intimacy. comfort can silence temporary worries. But it cannot heal loneliness. They saw clearly what others could not, and once truth is seen, pretending becomes impossible. The next morning arrived, everyone expected celebration. Instead, history quietly changed. The conversation lasted only minutes. The words were simple, respectful, kind, yet every sentence carried extraordinary weight. The wealthy proposal was declined. No anger, no arrogance, no bitterness. Only gratitude and refusal. The room fell silent. No one understood, faces froze, questions filled the air. Some thought fear had taken over, others assumed regret would soon follow. Several people tried changing the decision, more explanations, more persuasion, more promises, yet something had already settled inside your soulmate, peace, real peace, the kind that survives disagreement, the kind that remains steady while everyone else becomes confused. Afterward, when they walked away alone, tears filled their eyes, not because they doubted the choice, because choosing destiny sometimes requires grieving possibilities that looked beautiful from a distance. Even correct decisions can feel painful, that is something few people understand. They whispered into the quiet, "I don't know where this road leads, but I know it isn't there." Those words rose into heaven, and heaven answered in ways they could not yet perceive. Because every surrendered future creates space for the future that truly belongs. At almost the same time, without knowing why, your own heart began changing. Perhaps you noticed it, perhaps you dismissed it, a growing desire to stop chasing people who offered attention without sincerity, an unusual peace about releasing what once felt impossible to lose. A quiet feeling that something unseen was approaching. These moments were not disconnected, they belonged to the same story. The invisible threads between two lives had begun tightening, not forcing, guiding, preparing, aligning. Still, neither of you knew the other, not fully, not yet. Yet heaven had already begun removing what could never become part of your shared future. Sometimes answered prayers look like closed doors. Sometimes miracles arrive disguised as disappointments. Sometimes protection feels exactly like loss. You have mourned certain endings without realizing they were making room for beginnings beyond imagination. Your soulmate experienced the same mystery. Neither of you celebrated the pruning while it happened. Only later would you understand why every unnecessary branch had to fall away. But there is one detail no one has told you, not even your soulmate fully understands it yet. The wealthy proposal contained a hidden condition. It was never spoken aloud, never written in any document. No witness noticed it. Yet heaven saw it immediately. Accepting that future would have required sacrificing one quiet part of their soul, the very same part that would one day recognize you. And what happened immediately after they walked away, what they discovered only hours later, what unexpected message arrived when they believed everything was finally over. That single moment changed the meaning of every decision they had made. But that revelation belongs to the next chapter, where the secret heaven concealed can no longer remain hidden. My beloved child, remain here a little longer. Do not allow impatience to steal what patience has been preparing. The next part of this story cannot be understood by rushing ahead. Because what happened after your soulmate walked away from that wealthy proposal was so unexpected that even they questioned whether their own heart had imagined it. Yet nothing about that moment was imagined. Every detail became another thread in a tapestry that had been woven long before either of you understood why your lives seemed to move through such unusual seasons. The silence after their decision felt heavier than they expected. People often believe that doing what is right immediately fills the heart with celebration. That is not always how destiny feels. Sometimes the first reward for obedience is silence. Sometimes the first companion of courage is loneliness. Your soulmate returned home carrying more questions than answers. The voices of others still echoed in their mind. You'll never receive an opportunity like this again. You're letting emotions control your future. You'll regret this. Those words lingered like shadows across the evening. For a brief moment, uncertainty tried to enter. Not because the decision was wrong, because every meaningful choice is tested before its purpose becomes visible. They sat quietly, staring through a window as darkness slowly covered the sky. The world outside appeared unchanged. Cars continued passing, lights flickered on inside distant homes, people laughed somewhere beyond the walls. Life continued as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet within their heart, everything had changed. They whispered a prayer that was almost too simple to notice. If I truly chose the path prepared for me, give me strength to keep walking even before I understand it. No lightning split the sky, no dramatic sign appeared, no voice thundered from the heavens. Instead, peace settled over them again, gentle, steady, like warm light reaching into a room before sunrise. That peace became their answer. Not because it explained the future, because it reminded them they did not need to control it. While they rested in that quiet assurance, something else was unfolding beyond anything they could see, at almost the exact same hour. You found yourself unexpectedly thinking about love. Perhaps you were walking alone. Perhaps you were finishing another ordinary day. Perhaps you were lying awake wondering why your heart refused to stop hoping despite every disappointment it had survived. You could not explain why those thoughts appeared. They simply arrived. One memory led to another. Old wounds resurfaced. Dreams you had buried gently knocked against the door of your spirit once more. You almost pushed them away. You almost convinced yourself to stop believing. But something inside you resisted giving up completely. You called it stubbornness. Heaven called it preparation. There is a mystery about hearts that remain open after suffering. They become recognizable, not to everyone, but to the ones who have also learned that genuine love cannot be purchased, manipulated, or rushed. Your soulmate had just proven that truth through one decision. You had been proving it through every season of waiting. Neither of you realized you were speaking the same language without ever exchanging a single word. Then something happened that no one expected. The person whose wealthy proposal had been declined did not respond with anger. They responded with confusion. They asked one question that echoed far deeper than anyone intended. If money wasn't enough, what exactly are you waiting for? Your soulmate stood still. How could they answer honestly? How do you explain a longing that has no visible face? How do you describe recognizing someone you have not yet met? How do you defend a future that exists only as peace inside your heart? For several moments, no words came. Then, quietly, almost without thinking, they answered, "I'm waiting for the kind of love that doesn't ask me to ignore my soul." The room became silent. No one knew how to respond. Some looked away, others smiled politely. Without understanding, a few shook their heads, convinced that idealism had replaced wisdom, yet those words were not spoken only for the people standing there, they echoed into places no human conversation could reach. Because truth spoken from sincerity always travels farther than we imagine, your soulmate left that conversation feeling strangely lighter. The weight they had carried for weeks disappeared almost instantly.